Well, welcome everybody. We're going to have a little discussion here on the Volkswagen GTI and afterward discussion about the video. On the call here, I've got my friend Paul Kuleska, long-term friend of mine. I've known him for a couple of decades. We've established that now. And he's definitely informed on the automotive industry. Whatever knowledge I may bring from a scientific aspect, he has it in terms of industry trends and developments, things in that regard. So everybody, please welcome Paul Kuleska. Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Hey, Chris. Yeah, a couple of decades. I thought it was only about 10 years also, but then I realized our high school reunion just passed 20 years, so we have some time together.
Oh, you're welcome. I appreciate you coming on board. The first question is, well, what are your thoughts on the 2020 GTI after watching this video?
You know, it's one of those cars that I've wanted to own for the last as long as I can remember. And my dad actually owned it in the 90s. He owned a Mark III, I guess, GTI. And that's what I learned to drive stick on. I still want the car, but it just doesn't fit my life right now. But I always go back to thinking that's the car that I want. I want a car that's kind of unique, but kind of goes under the radar. You know, a lot of people, especially in the United States, look at them and they think, oh, it's kind of a wagon, kind of not a wagon. So unless you're an enthusiast, I don't think most people look at them as fun cars. They're just another car, right, on the road, just a little car, and maybe without realizing how much stuff you can fit in it. And at least in my mind, for all these years, a fun car to drive. But after watching your video, I have some reservations now. A couple of feelings, I guess, that I had from watching the video is, I think what you keep touching on is the performance in daily living. So most people that do buy the GTI probably have some sort of, automotive background or a feeling that I want to have this kind of fun, cool car, and they know maybe a little bit of its history, but they probably just commute to work and to Trader Joe's, to get like gluten-free muffins. And maybe have a couple of car seats or go to IKEA and can fit a closet, in the hatchback. When you look at it on paper and you look at the numbers, you think this is going to be a really fun, quick car to drive around, commuting, going to the grocery store. That's what 98% of the drivers will do. And it seems like it's missing some of that fun that, maybe the GTIs of the olden days had.
Yeah, it definitely has that duplicitous nature that I tried to present when I said it's a great show horse, but when you're actually trying to put it to work out on the streets, it's the performance isn't going to be there. It's so temperamental. It's definitely made an impression on me. Well, for instance, I know the automatic of that car is faster than the manual, and I'm already dissatisfied with the performance of the manual. I'm actually turned off on manual transmissions as a whole now because for 3 years I've driven one that didn't perform as expected, which is a shame because I've owned a manual transmission vehicle for the past 9 years. As a driving enthusiast, what do you always think about? People always talk about manual transmissions. That's the way to go. The Corvette is a prime example of a car where people have griped about, oh, there's not a manual transmission anymore. But then you go and look at the numbers and people aren't buying manual transmissions. Mechanically, the automatics shift faster and you have a longer gear train. I mean, you could go 8, 9, 10 gears, right, on some of these automatics and have much more versatility in terms of performance than you could with the manual. So yeah, this car and it's kind of turned me off to the manual transmission flavor a little bit. I yearning to get back in something that drives the ambition back into me.
Yeah. Have you driven the automatic version? And that's a DSG, right? Is that a DSG?
Yeah, that the
Yeah.
automatics, the DSG. And no, I haven't driven it. Have you?
Okay. I've driven a few Volkswagens. Actually, I drove like a 2023 Atlas, and I don't know if that's a DSG with a 2 liter, the same engine as yours, I guess. I think it has just like a small power bump from your car. It's over 1,000 pounds heavier than your car, and that car does feel tremendously underpowered. But anytime you step on the gas like 50% or more, that's where you really feel that engine struggling. And then
Hmm.
seeing on your video, on your review, that engine load, it feels like it's got like 130% engine load in the Atlas. and it's still just not moving along, But again,
Hmm.
it's a much larger vehicle. It's unfortunate that the hot hatch, the kind of most famous of these cars, is turning off people from manual transmissions. I would imagine with the few manuals that are still left, that would be one of them that where people would flock to.
One of the major publications, whether it's Car and Driver or Motor Trend or whomever, they have an article recently about, hey, new cars that you could still get that are manual transmission. So it's in that mix. And then when you start to look at the performance per dollar and whatever else, that's another appeal that the GTI has. And look, the 2024 GTI could be totally different animal because yeah, it does have more power.
When you were shopping for this car, did you test drive any other cars?
No, because when I bought this car, I mean, I did shop for other cars, but I bought this car near the peak of COVID,
Okay.
and it was out of necessity. I was having overheating issues with my Focus ST, where a hose just consistently kept rupturing. Thermal damage is something that I wasn't going to risk or tolerate, and I figured let's give that one a shot.
And really, the Focus ST is inspired by the GTI, right?
Yeah, I would imagine it's hard not to be inspired, I think, by the GTI. And if you look at the accolades that in the description of the GTI review video that we're discussing around, I reference a wiki page that highlights some of the awards. That car can't go 5 years without an award. One of the biggest awards it continuously gets is Car and Driver 10 Best. And they will tell you, hey, this is a 10 plus year consecutive Car and Driver 10 Best Award winner. I do think that there are things that car does very well. But when I go to push on that gas pedal, I want you to give me your all. Not getting that is a huge deal breaker for me.
And watching the video with that compared to the Lincoln, it's a drastic video. I think even this sound that you hear from both of those engines, you can feel like the Lincoln is working. It feels like it's working harder, but I kind of want my engine to work. Like I want it to be effortless, but I also want it to give me, all it's got at the same time. I drive a 2.0 T, 2-liter four-cylinder engine in a car that's a little heavier than yours. It kind of moves pretty quickly. It's got a lot of torque. Another friend of ours had a Jetta in the early 2000s, and I remember driving that. And I don't know if you remember, Chris, but if you stepped on the gas pedal at 20 miles per hour in the second gear, it had a little bit of a turbo delay, right? Like a second turbo delay, but then it would spin the wheels a lot of the times, right? It was pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
And I kind of, in my mind, the GTI always had that, and it doesn't have that.
At least the one that I'm driving and I own doesn't have that. But I'm assuming that this is the performance in at large, because again, I took it to the dealership and they said, oh, this is all working as intended. And looking at it by the numbers, I'm seeing there's some governance here that's kind of keeping me from getting everything that I was expecting from it. Two things I'd like to follow up with. One, what year is the Honda Accord you have?
2018. So it's the first year of the 10th generation Accord, and it has a detuned Civic Type R engine, I guess. So the Civic Type R, I think, has around 300 horsepower. I think mine has 257, something like that, and 270 something torque. And it's a 10-speed automatic.
Wow.
So it does have a lot of gears, and they're especially the first two gears are very aggressive. They're very short. But the Civic Type R, right? It's kind of, I guess maybe Golf R would compete more with Civic Type R, but it's kind of inspired by the GTI.
Let me say this. If you, the viewer, do you want to see Paul do a review of the 2018 Honda Accord, leave a comment down below and let him know, hey, Paul, we want to see what you think of it. You were talking before about went to the Atlas, how it felt like it was giving 130%, and how your current car, how you were accelerating. It was laboring, but a good laboring. There's that threshold where if a car is underpowered, you punch it, it downshifts if it's an automatic, kicks high in the revs, climbs ever so slowly because it doesn't have the power to pull you through it. And you're just waiting there, holding the steering wheel like, come on, come on, come on, come on, right? There's that labored. And then there's the bam, that muscle power or that engine power. Like, to give an extreme, a friend of ours just shared a video with Paul and I this morning of a 1100 horsepower F-150. And yeah, when they step on that gas pedal, this thing screams like a top fuel dragster and is just pegged at 7,000 RPM the whole time, just going through all those gears, bam, 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 bam. And you see the people like they're going light speed like this. That's the good labor that we're after. I
That's
gotta
right.
say, one thing that I loved about the Focus ST, look, it was spirited, okay? I'm not trying to say this thing was a Corvette or anything like that. But at 20 miles per hour, when I punched that accelerator and I'm in second gear, that car accelerated like it was angry and it was after something. And I loved it. I love the aggression that it gave when it pulled forward. And it's so disheartening on this car that I don't get that. I get hints of it from the MKC, but not here.
But is it the emission scandal that Volkswagen had? Is that what's holding it back? Because it seems like the car is engineered, in a sterile German office, and it's got all the right parts, it's got all the right numbers. It also feels like they forgot to give it to drivers and get some feedback from them and from people like you maybe, who would say, hey, all the numbers are there if you kind of push the car and they look good on paper, but we're missing some of that hot hatchness and some of that aggression and some of that, being light on your feet. That's what brings the fun to the car too, right? And it won't feel light on the feet when you step on the gas and nothing's happening. Yeah, it just feels like maybe they forgot to give that car to some drivers to test it out before really releasing it,
That's just a suspicion I have, that maybe in the aftermath of the Volkswagen diesel scandal, that they were trying to modify their approach to the cars to make sure that in all regards it performed as anticipated or as reported. Again, that's just a hypothesis that I put forward. I'm really interested in other Volkswagen drivers. Leave a comment down below. Do you experience this as well on your stock GTI 2020 model? Do you not get the punch? Are you driving automatic? Are you driving manual? But maybe, I'm not going to say I have a lemon, but I've got an outlier. What qualities do you think separate a hot hatch from a regular car? Like, what's got to be in its DNA?
Value, right? Spacious interior, kind of being that under the radar type car, just being light on its feet, more than you expect when you step on that gas pedal, right? All of those inputs that you mentioned, the gas pedal, the brake pedal, the steering, and I think you want some of that aggression that you experience in your ST. When you step on the gas pedal, that's where that hotness comes in, is a little bit of aggression. I like how you put that in. And as I was thinking about it, like, is Volkswagen trying to hold back a little bit to sell more Golf Rs, right? Because those have more power, right? I think in the 300s. I think some people maybe are cross shopping like an Audi A3 or Audi S3, and they're all kind of similar, similarly powered cars in a similar price range. So I wonder if that's where Volkswagen has to make a decision that we can't make this as aggressive because people won't go to the S3 or the Golf R, and that's where they lose some of that hotness in the GTI.
Well, that's a good point. Purposefully watering down the mix, the recipe, in order to help differentiate the car market and set it apart so that it's not competing against itself. Thank you for watching the first half of my interview with Paul. If you want to be notified when the second half becomes available, click the subscribe button. And if you want early access and other rewards, join my Patreon page at patreon.com/carmotion.